Hey, what's up everyone? This is Mark Miller at Sound Theory Studio, and I wanted to do a video today about how to pick your first guitar. You could really use this video to pick a guitar at any level that you're at, but it's mostly geared toward beginners, because I have a lot of students who are just starting, and one of the first questions I always get asked is, how do you pick a guitar? What should you look for? And so on. And so I want to do at least a short video to just address some of the things you should look for, what kind of homework you should do ahead of time, and etc. So I think that the first thing you need to decide is what type of guitar you're going to get. And what I mean by what type is you could get a classical guitar, you could get a steel string acoustic guitar, you could get an electric guitar, and then there's variations. You could get a 7-string guitar, an 8-string guitar, a 9-string guitar. If you're into metal, those are pretty popular. There's so many different ones you can choose from. There's hollow body guitars. I mean, it just goes on and on. So how I would recommend you determine that is just think about the kind of music you like and the kind of music you envision yourself playing. If you see yourself playing, a Bach concerto on stage, you want a classical guitar. If you picture yourself, playing some heavy metal, you're going to want an electric guitar, and you'll need to figure out, do you want a 6-string or a 7-string? If you envision yourself playing something like, some acoustic Pink Floyd or something like that, well, then you'll need an acoustic guitar. So first things first is just pick out the type. And if you're not sure, that's something to think about. And I would start looking at your favorite bands, who you would like to sound like, what instrument speaks to you the most, and then use that as your guide. At some point down the road, as you play guitar more and more, you may own all of those different types. I think I have at least one of each. But at the beginning, just choose the one that you think is best for you. Now, there's kind of an old misconception I'd like to take care of right away, which I hear a lot of new students tell me that they've heard you're supposed to start on an acoustic guitar, even if your goal is to play electric. Everyone starts on an acoustic. And I'm not really sure where that came from. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. It never has. If you envision yourself playing an electric guitar, buy an electric guitar. If you want to play acoustic, buy an acoustic. If you want to play classical, buy a classical. I see no reason at all to learn acoustic guitar first before playing electric, if that's what you want to do. They're two different instruments. They're played in slightly different ways. I think you should buy the instrument that excites you the most, that is what you want to envision yourself playing, and then just stick with that. Now, when it comes to children, it's kind of the same process. You just have to talk to your child about what it is they envision playing. And I would let the child decide. I think one of the hardest things about keeping children in lessons and keeping them interested is making sure that they're playing what they enjoy playing and they're working on what they enjoy working on. So if you have a child who's really into rock music and they want an electric guitar, but the parent thinks, well, we should start with an acoustic guitar, you've just limited the odds of your child continuing playing by, I would think, at least half. Because right out of the gate, before they've even had their first lesson or played their first note, they're playing it on an instrument that they didn't really want. And since the price is about the same, you can get a cheap electric guitar for about the same price as a cheap acoustic guitar. There's really no reason to do that. So I just wanted to throw that out there too. Once you've chosen the type of guitar you want, so let's say you want an electric guitar, now you need to start thinking genre. So what I mean by that is there's many types of electric guitars out there. Some are meant for jazz, some are geared toward blues, some are country, some are rock, some are heavy metal. So once you decide the type, be specific about your genre. Now, there's many guitars out there that are great for a lot of genres. They're very versatile. But it's still something to keep in mind. I'm not going to, if someone comes in and they want to learn jazz, I'm not going to recommend an Ibanez 8-string guitar that's clearly built for heavy metal. It just doesn't make any sense. So keep the genre that you're really interested in mind as well. And if you like multiple genres, I would recommend a guitar that is very versatile. And without making this video 10 hours long, I'll just say that if you can do simple searches for, let's say you're into rock. So you can say, what are the most popular, rock guitar brands and styles out there? I'm sure Google has tons of research, searches that you can look at, tons of results that will show you, the Fender Strat is very popular for rock and roll, the Fender Stratocaster. Ibanez makes a lot of great rock guitars. And there's really a lot out there. Look up the best blues guitars or what's the most common blues guitars. Again, you'll see Fender Stratocasters. They're pretty versatile. You'll see Gibsons, all kinds of things. So keep genre in mind as well. Another thing that's really important about picking your guitar is you want something that you like the looks of. And this is something that I don't hear people talk about a whole lot when they talk about picking a guitar. They usually talk about woods and the pickup quality and the, how it plays, the how high the strings are off the fretboard, which is referred to as action, which are all very important things, obviously. But one thing I don't hear people talk about probably as much is, do you like how the guitar looks? And I think that's really important. And I would take both into consideration. If you get a really high quality guitar, but you don't really like the looks of it, it's a mental thing. You won't want to play it as much. So this guitar, fortunately, I'm lucky because this guitar is very high quality and I love how it looks. This is probably my favorite guitar that I own. And to me, this is just beautiful. And all this, floral pattern and vines going up the fretboard and all that doesn't make the guitar sound one bit better. It has no effect on the tone whatsoever. But when I look at it, I want to play because it inspires me. It's just a beautiful guitar. And I think that says a lot, and I think that's really important. So I would probably recommend just going to your local music store and finding guitars in your price range, seeing if there's one that just speaks to you. Like you look at it and you're like, man, that's a beautiful guitar. I love that color, or I love the shape. And sit down and try it. And if you don't like how it sounds or how it feels, then move on to the next one. There's no shortage of guitars. But as soon as you find one that you like the look of, it kind of speaks to you, and you like how it sounds, that's the one. And I would go with that one, and I think you'll be pretty happy with it. And if you can't really tell how it sounds because you can't play yet, I would ask the salesperson to play it for you, and just listen to it. And if it looks like they can play pretty well and they know what they're doing, but it doesn't sound that great to you, it may not be a great guitar. But if it sounds really nice, well, that shows you what it's capable of doing, and so it would probably work out for you really well. Now, here's a topic that comes up a lot, and that's the quality of guitar. What quality of guitar should you get? And by quality, we're also talking price, of course. Greater the quality, the more the cost. So this is just my opinion, and I want to just state first and foremost that I've played guitars that cost relatively low amounts in the scheme of things, like around $400 or $500, that were excellent. I mean, I was really, really impressed with them. I've played guitars that were $1,500 that I thought were not very nice at all and were not a good deal for the money at all. So don't let someone tell you that a cheap guitar is just going to be terrible and an expensive guitar is going to be wonderful, and it's just black and white like that, because it isn't. However, it is true that the more you spend and the better the quality, the better the guitar overall. There's exceptions, but overall that trend is definitely there. So what I always tell students is I would get the best guitar that you can afford and are comfortable getting. So let me get a little more specific on that. Let's say your budget is high, let's say you have quite a bit of money, but you're not sure about your interest. Well, I wouldn't get the best guitar you can afford, because that might be a really, really nice one. And if you're not totally convinced that you're interested in guitar, it could end up being a waste. And then it'll just collect dust if you give up on it, or you might sell it for a lot less than it was worth or what you paid for it. And then at the same token, if you don't have a lot of money and you're on a fairly restricted budget, but you're really excited about playing guitar, I still think you could do yourself a favor by getting the nicest guitar you possibly can. Because if you're really passionate about it and you think you're going to have a lot of fun playing, and you don't see yourself giving up, like you just can't wait to dig into this, you do yourself a favor and get a pretty nice guitar, or at least the nicest you can possibly get. One thing I see a lot of people do is they'll say, well, I'm just starting. Yeah, I'm really excited about it, but I don't really feel like I should spend a lot of money on it yet. I'm just starting. I'm no good. I don't know how to play anything. Well, fair enough. But the problem is, if you then go out and buy a really cheap guitar, like something that's a couple $100, more often than not, it's going to be a lot harder to play, and it's not going to sound very good. And so you're kind of stacking the deck against you right out of the gate. And you may end up not really enjoy playing guitar just because the instrument is such low quality. So why would you do that to yourself? I mean, that's kind of setting yourself up for failure. So I always recommend people get at least an average quality guitar to start, not something low quality. So let's define what is low quality and what's at least average. Again, there's always exceptions, but what I found is that there's a really big quality jump at around $400 or $500. So if you go to a guitar store and look at the cheapest guitars they have, you'll find some for even like $150. I've even seen some for $99. And they're actually not kids' guitars. I mean, they're like full-size regular guitars, but they're that cheap. What you should expect to see for a guitar that cheap would be really cheap woods that aren't going to resonate very well, and it'll just feel cheap. The construction quality isn't going to be very good. You'll probably see flaws in the construction if you inspect it closely. The pickups for that low amount of money would and pickups, just in case you don't know, are these. So these here are pickups, and pickups detect the vibration of the strings and then send a signal out through the cable, which goes to the amp and which makes the sound. And of course, I'm talking electric guitar right now, but the same principle goes for acoustic and classical and everything else. The really cheap guitars are just not going to sound all that great and are not going to play very well. And in the case of electric guitars, the pickups, really cheap pickups, they just don't sound good. So I would just hate to see you start your journey toward being a race car driver in a 20-year-old beat-up clunker of a car, so to speak. Why would you do that? If you want to be a race car driver, you should at least get something decent. So that's kind of my take on it. So for quality of guitar, I'm going to say go ahead and get the best that you can within reason for your budget. Another way to look at this is I have played for 20 years now, and in my time I've had many guitars. And I remember at the very beginning I had a used guitar that was a generic brand name. I can't even tell you what the brand was at this point, but it was just not a very good guitar. I guess it was okay to start on, but I went from that to a very low-end ESP, which I really liked, but again, it didn't hold up very well as far as the construction quality, and it actually kind of started to fall apart after a while. Then I went to a Telecaster clone by another kind of generic company, but it was a little more expensive and seemed to be built well, and it actually was built pretty well, but the sound was so-so. And I could go on and on. I've been through so many guitars, but the point being, in hindsight, I could have saved a lot of money by just getting a nice guitar to begin with. And maybe that's not an option. I mean, when I started, I was pretty young and I wouldn't have had enough money to get a really nice guitar. But at some point during my progression through all of these different guitars, I probably could have done myself a pretty big favor and just skipped a lot of these incremental upgrades and gotten something really nice. And then just be done with it and not really need other guitars at that point. Like at that point, if I bought another guitar just because there was another one that I really liked the sound of, but it wouldn't be a replacement for what I already had. It would just be in addition to, which is much nicer than needing to replace something because you're just not happy with it. So that's something to keep in mind as well. Now focusing on electric guitar, you also need an amp. Amplifiers are, I'm much more lax with what I recommend for amplifiers. Amplifiers are easily replaceable over the years. You can always get better and better. And I think a really cheap one to start actually is fine. I wouldn't get one necessarily that's powered by a 9-volt battery and is about that big. I mean, I'd get something a little better than that. But if you spend, $150, maybe $200 on a practice amplifier, I think you'll be very happy, and it could last you for years before you'd feel like you really need something bigger and louder and better and and higher quality. Just a quick breakdown on how amplifiers work. There's basically two types of amplifiers people talk about. There's solid state and tube amplifiers. Solid state amplifiers are basically, just picture a circuit board that's doing most of the work, basically emulating all the different sounds that a guitar can make, like gain and reverb and delay and things like that. It's mostly like a computer circuit board that is powering the whole thing. There's advantages and disadvantages to solid state amps. The advantages are they're much cheaper, and basically any practice amp you find around that $150, $200 mark are going to be solid state, just because they're cheaper. They're really dependable. They usually last a really long time. They're lightweight, which is great because, as you'll find out as you start playing guitar more, tube amplifiers weigh a ton and are hard to move around. And solid state amps are just fine, especially for a beginner, so that's what I would recommend. Tube amplifiers actually use glass tubes. And those glass tubes help power the amplifier, and they color the sound, and your gain comes from the preamp tube amplifiers, the preamp tubes. And they sound great. It's not a digital process. It's what I refer to more as an organic process, an analog process. And the sound is much better and much clearer and much warmer, and this goes for all genres, heavy metal, blues, jazz. I really like tube amplifiers much better, but they're way more expensive, they're way heavier, and you have to replace the tubes every now and then. And tubes are typically about, it depends, $15 each, and some tube amplifiers have, 8 or 9 tubes in them. Some more, some less, but it can get expensive. It can be $100 every time you swap out the tubes, which would be every couple of years. So it's not a huge cost, but it's something to take into consideration. So I would recommend for anyone watching this who's brand new to the guitar, just go with a solid state practice amplifier and you'll be good to go. So anyway, I hope that's helpful to you. I hope that helps you pick out your first guitar. If you have any additional questions for me, just throw them in the comment section. I'll be happy to answer them. And good luck and have fun with your first guitar. And thanks for watching. Take care. Bye.